Okay, so in this example, we have something called a compound inequality. So a compound inequality is basically two problems compiled into one. So in order to graph this statement, we're actually going to break it up into two separate problems. So I can rewrite this original statement as -3 is less than x and x is less than or equal to 2. And then with the practice that we've already done, we know that x values, when they equal a number, they're going to give us vertical lines. So let's graph this one first. So we know to begin at the x-axis, and we know that we're going to have to cut the x-axis with the vertical line at -3. So my x-axis is right there. We find -3, and it's right there, so I'm going to plot it in purple. And now we create this vertical line. So now we have to look at the quantifier. So my quantifier here is saying that -3 is less than x. But a more powerful way of thinking about this is x is greater than -3. The reason I'm writing x is greater than is because the x tells us what direction to shade, either left or right. And since we have greater, all of the values that are to the right are going to be greater than the starting position. So I'm going to shade to the right. Alright, so now we're not done yet. We still have to graph this one in the same graph here. So this time I'm going to plot this in blue. We gotta begin at the x-axis and create that vertical line through +2. So if I look at my x-axis, we look for +2, which is right there. So I'm going to plot it with blue, and now I'm going to cut through the x-axis with a vertical line here. Now the quantifier here is saying less than. So we are going to have to shade to the left right here. And I actually made a small mistake, but this one is supposed to be a dotted line or a dashed line. So here, let me just write that, dashed, and then here we have less than and solid because of that equal to that's here below that symbol. So here I fixed it. So now we have a dashed line for -3 less than x right here, and we have a solid line for x less than or equal to 2. So let me actually label these. X is less than or equal to 2, and then -3 is less than x. And every point here is going to satisfy our solution, including +2, but not including -3. Alright, in this problem, we're going to graph two inequalities in the same grid. So from our practice, we know that y values, they give us horizontal lines when they equal a number. So I know that right now we have inequalities, but if we look at the observations with equality, that's going to help us make sense on how to graph these problems. So we get a horizontal line, and we have to start at y. So let's look at our y-axis here, and let's look for -1, and -1 is right there. So let's go ahead and plot it in purple. And now, since we have a horizontal line, I need to cut through the y-axis, but I have to identify whether we have a dotted or a solid line. So here we notice that there's no equal to symbol. So we can conclude that we have to draw the line as a dashed line. So horizontally, we're going to dash this through -1. The final thing we have to consider is whether we're going to shade above or below our line. So here we have y less than, and you can think about less than as everything below the line. So I'm gonna basically shade all of the values that are below this line. Now, in order to finish the problem completely, we gotta do this one. We have to graph this inequality. So similar to the one we just did, we get a horizontal line, and then this time we're going to get a solid line because we have this equal to symbol. So let's look at our y-axis, and then this time we're going to go and find +4. So we go down, and it's right there. So let's go ahead and plot it in red. So we have this, and our horizontal line is going to get cut, but this time we're able to write it or draw it as a solid line. And then the final thing we have to consider is whether we're going to shade below or above this line. But here, our statement or the quantifier is saying y is greater than. And greater than means that we have to shade everything that is above this line. So I'm going to go ahead and shade above the line. And this would be the solution to this inequality.